Hi everyone, and welcome to Your Idea in a Nutshell, the last session in BioNB's spring webinar series. Our previous webinars covered topics related to marketing, sales, and intellectual property. If you're interested in viewing any of those presentations, they've been uploaded to our YouTube channel. I'll send out those links following today's presentation. And for your information, this webinar will also be recorded and uploaded. I am joined today by Amine Benmoussa from Montreal. I'll give him a proper introduction in a moment. I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items first. So Amine will start us off with a presentation on his thoughts and tips about pitching to venture capitalists in the health and life sciences field. And then we're going to have an interactive question and answer session with the audience members. So you can actually ask questions in two ways. Firstly, you can type in your questions at any time. On the webinar panel on your right, you should see a questions tab. Just simply open that up and type in your question. Amine and I will monitor those and make sure they get answered. And the second way, you can actually use the raise your hand function that's built into the webinar system. Next to your name, you should have a little raised hand button. When you press this, it signals to me that you have a question or comment. And when it's your turn, I'll simply unmute your microphone and you can go ahead and talk away. Amine and I encourage you to engage as much as you like, so please don't be shy. As a small incentive for participating, each audience member who asks a question will be put into a draw for a Cineplex Movie Pass. So I think that covers most of the preamble. I'm flying solo on today's webinar, so I apologize in advance for any technical difficulties that come up. If at any time you can't hear me or Amine, please use the question function or the chat function to let us know. So Amine is an associate director in the Healthcare Fund. He joined BDC Venture Capital in 2011 and has over 8 years' experience in banking and venture capital. Prior to joining the BDC Healthcare Fund team, Amine has previously held roles in lending and investment at BMO Financial Group and was part of the New Economy investment team at the Solidarity Fund QFL as a financial analyst in residence for the Life Sciences team and as a consultant for both the IT and Life Sciences investment teams. Amine is currently a board observer at Clementia Pharmaceuticals. He is also a selection committee member of the Philadelphia and Boston Canadian Technology Accelerators. Amine has participated in other Atlantic region events, including last year's Bio-Innovation Challenge where he served as a judge. He's familiar with some of the challenges unique to our region and is excited to lend his outsider's perspective. So please, Amine, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, Jenny. Thanks for the opportunity you're giving me to share a few thoughts about how we view pitches to VCs. And please, as Jenny mentioned, if you have any questions, do not hesitate. This is really meant to be a discussion. There's no real secret sauce. I'm just sharing a few thoughts with you, so I'm more than happy to engage in the discussion. So, just to start, this is meant to be just to share a few thoughts about pitching to VCs. This is not about telling you about the number or kind of slides you should be putting in a deck. There are tons of outstanding blog posts, books, and seminars about that. So I just want to share a few thoughts and mostly engage in a discussion with you. A few rules. So rule number one, approaching the right VCs, you really want to make sure when you're pitching someone, you really want to make sure that the substance of your pitch really fits with the fund's investment scope. And that you can really find on the fund's website. It is usually, a fund's investment strategy is usually well described on their website. It's crazy how many business plans that come to us that are just too far off from what we're interested in. We receive sometimes business plans for pink sheet companies selling over-the-counter lotions, and that's just not something we do. So pitching an idea like that to a fund that's not really interested in a particular segment or being at a stage that the fund does not invest in, it's just a waste of your time, and the deck will simply be disregarded. So really try to understand and do a good market scoping of the funds out there before you start reaching out to VCs, and try to find the one that's going to be a better fit for your business and your stage and your opportunity stage. A second piece of advice is try to land a meeting. Most VCs are overwhelmed with proposals and requests for funding. On average, if we think about our fund, about the BDC Healthcare Fund, we review about 500 deals a year. And sending your business plan by email is good, but finding someone who can really refer you to someone at the fund is much better. Work your network. A little research really goes a long way, and if we get a qualified referral, it really attracts our interest, even if it's just out of courtesy for the colleagues. If I get an email from Jenny talking to me about an entrepreneur in the area she knows and who has a brilliant idea he'd like to discuss, I will probably give it much more attention than a cold email or a cold call. Now that said, it doesn't mean don't do cold calls and cold emails, but if you can really work your network and have a referral, it's probably much better. And the reason I chose this picture with the screens is because I want to mention something. In Canada, for some reason, entrepreneurs really like to have in-person meetings. And in-person meetings are good, but you don't have to wait for the person to be, sometimes I get a call or an email, and I'm like, yeah, sure, let's schedule a call, let's schedule a meeting. And the person goes like, well, no, let's wait until you're in town and we'll meet in person. Sometimes that's just not practical, and nowadays, web meetings work just fine. So do not hesitate to have a meeting, but if you cannot have it in person, a web meeting or a phone call works just fine. Try to really get a good grasp and a good understanding of your audience. I chose this picture just to show you how people can be different, and your audience is just the same. Every VC fund and every investment professional in each of those VC funds is different. The best pitch likely to get them interested will therefore be completely different. And this becomes even more important when you get to the second or third pitch. So usually what you can do is, if you get past the first hurdle of a pitch and you're invited to do a second presentation to the whole group or to the fund partnership, try to identify a champion within that fund that will really work for you and tweak your presentation to the taste of his colleagues. Usually we know what our colleagues like, we know what they, we know what they don't like, and we know what they will focus on. And it's just fine. It's not working behind their back. Usually when I like a company and I like to have it presented to my colleagues, I will work closely with the company and do dry runs and go through their pitch again and again and again until I know that it will resonate well with my colleagues. And I do it in full transparency. I'm not trying to hide something from my colleagues. I'm just trying to, I know what they like, I know what they will focus on, and I'm trying to answer their questions to the best of our ability, and I try to help the entrepreneur package his idea and his opportunity the right way. So asking for feedback and doing dry runs when you get closer is really, really key. Try to open with your thesis. You really want to make sure that the investors are really engaged right from the get-go. Describe what your prospective investors might really believe in order to want to be shareholders of your company. That should be your really first slide. Your first slide should really articulate what the investment thesis is. And then the rest of the pitch should serve as a backup for your claims, and it should help increase your investors' confidence in the thesis. There's a big debate about teams and whether we should be investing on management teams or on projects, and I think both are equally important. Lots of people talk about the management rule, and yes, it is. Management teams are really important, and without a great management team, you will not be able to execute on any single strategy. But while it's great to celebrate the strength of a team, try to be brief. Spending 15 to 20 minutes describing the genius founding team members and how experienced your board members are is probably one of the best ways to lose attention. We usually know a great team when we see one. Try to be brief. And maybe a special note when it comes to boards and management teams in Atlantic Canada. One of the patterns I have observed while spending like the past 2 to 3 years going on a regular basis to Atlantic Canada is sometimes you see the same board members in 5, 6 companies. It's not a bad thing to go outside and try to find the right talent. There's great talent in Atlantic Canada. We are very pleased every time we go there and we see great innovation. But Canada is a huge country and North America is a huge continent. Try to find the right talent where it is and do not focus on Atlantic Canada only. In any pitch or any investment opportunity, you will have people objecting. There will be issues that are potentially problematic for your financing, and people you're pitching will object some of your ideas. But knowing that you'll have most of the attention from investors in the first couple of slides, address them head on. Right from the get-go, try to identify those problems and address them. Also, most investors will try to take a look at your pitch before the meeting, and they will arrive with questions. But if you proactively show you understand their principal concerns, you will earn their attention for the rest of the pitch. So right from the get-go, try to identify the risks for them, explicitly identify them, and show how you can mitigate those risks. It's very annoying when entrepreneurs have multiple slides on how big a market is, what the revenue for a segment or surgery procedure were last year, etc. All VCs have one thing in common. We're all chronic readers, and we usually spend a lot of time trying to understand micro drivers and trends. So don't be surprised if VCs start reaching out for their BlackBerries when those slides are presented. I think unless you've got a particular angle, don't bother wasting time on the macro metrics. Instead, spend as much time as possible doing an accurate segmentation of your market and tell us more about what is your addressable market, instead of saying, well, this market is a $15 billion market and it's huge. Everybody knows that some areas are just huge. I'm being a bit provocative on purpose here. The title, Who Cares About Science, but maybe a bit provocative. But biotech entrepreneurs often fall in love with their technologies and can sometimes fall into the trap of talking for a long time about cool scientific hypotheses, complex chemical structures. We also like that, but we're really more interested in the unmet medical need and how research, or how fundamental research, can translate into commercial opportunities. So really try to show some data, but really try to show what the market opportunity is. And think about it as a market pull versus research push balance. Be upfront about your competition. Many times we get pitches from companies that claim there's no competition, or they're the only ones who came up with something. Well, guess what? Your worst competition is status quo. And sometimes even if you have competitive solutions, it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that there is demand for something. The key is to show how different you are and how differently you'll execute and what kind of edge you'll get. The golden rule here is be realistic. We are already taking, as healthcare or biotech investors, we're already taking a lot of risks. We're taking a huge technical risk. Most of the time in biotech, it's binary. If a clinical trial fails, the whole program fails. We're taking a market risk, and so on. We're taking tons of risks. So we're trying to fade away from one risk, that being the refinancing risk. So nowadays, when we approach any single investment opportunity, we try to have a very clear line of sight when it comes to the capital needs to reach a value-driving milestone. So be prepared to discuss how much capital, how much money it will take you to bring a deal to a liquidity event. And please, don't use the three-letter IPO word unless you have a very solid reason to believe it's a viable route. It's a turn off to hear an entrepreneur talk about an IPO when you're still in discovery stage and you're years and years from having a solid package for Wall Street. So that sums it up for the thoughts I wanted to share with you. Again, I don't want this to be a do's and don'ts or how to do a perfect pitch. I think there's tons of data out there. I just wanted to share a few things that we like and a few things that we don't like. And I'd like to open the floor for questions at this point.
We don't have any questions in right now, but I have some of my own from some of the people in the office. Is that okay?
Sure.
Someone wanted to know what would be a red flag in a presentation or a business plan that would immediately turn you off?
Well, many things could be a red flag, but just to mention a few of them, having a team that's trying to do something they have no experience in is definitely a red flag. Misrepresentation is a showstopper or impression of misrepresentation. Sometimes, I mean, entrepreneurs are very candid people, but sometimes just the way they package the information can be perceived as misrepresentation, and that's definitely one of the red flags. Not knowing your market. I mean, if somebody comes to you and says, well, in Canada we spend $15 billion in digital marketing, we just know that's not true. So somebody who does not know their market or does not do a proper segmentation just tells us the team is naive and the team is probably not worth betting on.
Great. We actually have a question from Nauman Faruqi of ChemGreen. He asks, how much financial information and details should be shared in the initial pitch?
So most VCs will say, so there's a balance to find. What we like to understand in a first pitch is, does this plan sound reasonable? Is it appealing? Is it an attractive opportunity? Real financial stuff is to be discussed when we move to real diligence. And the reason I'm saying this is many entrepreneurs are reluctant to sharing too much information unless there is a confidentiality agreement in place. But at the same time, most VCs are reluctant to sign in confidentiality agreements early on because it's not practical. When you think that we'll review hundreds of opportunities a year, if we're to sign one every time we look at a deal, we'll spend half of our day signing CDAs. So share high-level details, share what's needed to have a good understanding of the project, but there's absolutely no need to know your balance sheet. If the company has been existing for a few years, I'm really not interested in your balance sheet. What I'm interested in is how much money do you need to build a company, or how much money do you need to the next big value driving milestone, and that should be considered a non-confidential information. I'm happy to take a follow-on question on this if there is one.
Sounds like the question was answered. Thank you for that question. I have another one here. Some people say that companies who have partnerships with universities or are sharing intellectual property with universities, it can also be a turnoff to investors. I just wanted to hear your comments on that.
Well, not really. I mean, there's a lot of innovation coming out of universities, and I think investors, especially in Canada, are very thankful for the great work being done by academia. And I think we owe to academia lots of research and lots of things who are currently on the market. So just being turned off like that is, to me, does not sound very reasonable. But I don't disagree with the fact that some universities have a reputation of being not very easy to negotiate with when it comes to licensing agreements. But that said, that's really not an area of focus at early stage of discussion. So no, I mean, as long as the agreements are clear, or the entrepreneurs know what kind of binding agreements they have with universities, that should not be a turn-off, or at least it should not be an area of focus at the early stage of assessment. And I have to say also that universities are becoming better and better, and some are even adopting more open innovation models where the researchers own part or most of the innovation.
Perfect. Thank you. Someone else was wondering if they're at an extremely early stage, is it ever too early to come and approach you, even in person or at an event? Is there ever, like, you have questions and then you can't answer? Is it easy to turn you off?
No, it's never too early, and I think what you have to understand is most of the time we'll do a deal probably 12 to 24 months after our first interactions. So it takes time, and it's never too early to start building a relationship. If it's not in our sweet spot, talk to us. We'll give you advice, and if it's not in our sweet spot, we may know someone who may be helpful for you. And worst case, we'll just follow the story and give you some advice and revisit the opportunity. I mean, most of the opportunities we look at 4 or 5 times before we commit dollars. So no, never too early. Every time you have an idea, pick people's brains and approach anyone you can. It's never too early.
That's really good to hear. Don't be scared, people. He's a nice guy. We have another question from Ken Green. They ask, is it reasonable to not reveal the names of collaborative commercialization partners in the initial public meeting due to sensitivities of these partners to be identified?
Yeah, I mean, for what we're interested in the very, very first meeting is the general concept appealing. Now, whether you have an agreement with Pfizer or AstraZeneca, I don't really care. You can just write Big Pharma, agreement with Big Pharma in discussion or something like that. That's good enough. So no, not really. And again, the first pitch is really a teaser. And if there is continued interest and people are interested in moving to diligence, well, and then at that point, the VCs are entitled to have more info, and the entrepreneur is also entitled to asking for a CDA before opening his data room. But as soon as you move to the next stages, be ready to open your kimono.
Nice. The next question is from Danny Williams. He asks, in showcasing your addressable market in your pitch, what forms of traction would an investor want to see when the company's early stage and still pre-revenue?
Well, it depends on sectors. So most companies will invest in are not making any revenue. Most of them are pre-revenue, so you won't have any traction. What we want to understand is, do you have a solution or a platform that has the potential of becoming a huge success? And to me, commercial traction is to be taken with a little grain of salt. It's very easy to show a company, even for revenue stage companies, I don't want to say it's very easy, but it's relatively easy for a company to make the first few 100,000, maybe $1 million or $2 million of revenue. The real stuff, or the real game, starts once you exceed the first $1 million or $2 million. And again, it's very different depending on the segments. When we look at a company in healthcare IT or services, we're a bit more sensitive to commercial traction, just because validation comes from commercial traction. But when we look at a pure biotech or medtech company, we really look at the potential more than the commercial traction, just because in most cases we'll invest way before commercial launch. I hope that answers the question, and I hope I understood it the right way. But I'm happy to take any follow-on on that.
Perfect. No questions from the audience right now. Oh, just joking. I have a question here from Chris Baker. He asks, communicating the pain points of a technology and a solution may require educating the investors about the existing status quo. What are good approaches to educating investors without overwhelming the company pitch?
Interesting question. That's a very interesting question. I think, well, number one, I think do, do not underestimate the knowledge of the knowledge investors may have in a particular segment, and do not. I mean, you don't have to put all your ideas on the pitch. You can just put a few points and speak to them, and depending on the investor's appetite of discussing those points at that meeting, you can explore. The other alternative is to have a bunch of appendix slides at the end to be used if need be. Most of our portfolio companies that we work with, when we start raising external rounds, we typically have a 15 to 20 slides deck for external investors, and in addition we have a second deck of about 100 to 200 slides sometimes that is very detailed, and we just pick and choose the slides if there is a question coming up from the audience.
I really like that piece of advice about the appendix slides. It really helps answering questions. Very cool. Another question. I mean, what is your opinion on these like pitch competition events? Do you find that that's a good forum for finding out what a company's all about?
Well, I have mixed feelings about those. So to me, I think they're important. I think for a company attending those events is good experience. It's a good way to mingle with investors and other players in the ecosystem. Now, sometimes just going to a 2-minute pitch event or a 5-minute where you have to pitch it, sometimes it does not do justice to the opportunity. But again, it's good experience. But I think more happens behind the doors or during the cocktail or right after lunch or right before lunch than during the pitch contest itself. So I think for a company it's always good to go there, but try to leverage all the airtime you have around the pitch contest.
What do you think of pitch events where they charge startups to participate? It's not a loaded question, I promise.
I will. Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on that. I think I don't understand what they would charge. I mean, I think it would be much better to charge other parties than startups, knowing that startups live on a shoestring. I mean, charging them for a pitch event is, to me, does not sound very reasonable. But they may have their own reasons to do that. My message to organizers is try to get some good sponsors.
I like that. It's a good answer. We have another question from Chem Green. They ask, how long is the usual first pitch, and how many slides are ideal to go with? I guess, and he's also wondering. Pardon?
So is Chem Green working on the draw or really asking questions?
Seems like he's asking questions. I could unmute him maybe, and he could talk to you personally.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Amine, are you there? Do you have a microphone so you can talk?
Yes, I do.
Hello. So you're increasing your chances for the draw. I see.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of the presentation, so I'm not sure what you're talking about. So, so I probably missed an important part of the presentation. I apologize. I was running late and I just got here. I missed the first four slides of the presentation. So I don't know. I talked to a number of VCs. I was in Boston last 2 weeks ago, and it seems like they were all over the map. Some people were willing to give us 5 minutes. Some people were willing to give us like 15 minutes or 20 minutes or half an hour at the most. And that kind of works back into your standard deck of slides. You need to tell the story, you need to tell it completely. So hence the question that what is the usual kind of thing that we should be kind of working towards and saying, hey, this is if you get an opportunity on the fly, you can go in and get the job and have first instance.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, VCs are also, when we go to events and conferences, we have similar but different objectives. I mean, when you go to an event or a conference, your objective is to meet with as many people and as many investors as possible. And our goal is to meet with as many companies as possible, because we know that when we review 500 opportunities, we have a likelihood of closing a deal on maybe one or two. So we have that kind of constraint, and that's why investors are in a rush, and that's why during those conferences they will give you maybe 5 to 10 minutes of airtime, if they give you time at all. I mean, even between VCs as colleagues, we don't give each other enough airtime during those conferences because we're trying to meet with everyone. So, and I think you're bringing a very good point. So having a good pitch does not only depend on your audience, but it also depends on the venue and the event. If you go to an event like that, having a 10 slides pitch is probably more than enough. You just want to have, or even an executive summary, or even an elevator pitch. Just work on your elevator pitch. Just try, maybe for those events, the best thing to do is just try to get people intrigued and schedule a follow-up call. If you can, within 5 minutes, get them intrigued, leave a good impression, and schedule a follow-up call and get a business card and really land them a phone meeting, I think that's a success, because they will simply not pay enough attention. They're trying to meet with so many people, they would not have enough attention and enough focus for your company.
Thank you.
Of course.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the audience? If not, we can wrap up, and maybe Amine could give us some final thoughts. If you do have extra questions, you can email them to me, and I'll make sure they'll get to Amine. That matters?
Yep. And also, I mean, Jenny, feel free to flip my coordinates to the crowd. I'm happy to interact with them. I'll be in Halifax for the Atlantic Venture Forum in a few weeks.
Great.
So if you guys are there, please let me know. I'm happy to grab coffee and talk. Some final thoughts. I mean, every time I go to Atlantic Canada, I'm excited. I'm very excited by the kind of quality we see both in management teams and innovation. So kudos to you guys. Keep it up, and please do not hesitate to reach out to us, whether it's for a short-term opportunity or just to build a relationship in the objective of doing something in the future. Do not hesitate. It's never bad to reach out and get some feedback.
Chem Green says they're pitching at the Atlantic Venture Forum, and they would love to meet you. How exciting.
Absolutely. So just come see me, and we'll chat.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Amine, for joining us today. And thanks to everyone who asked questions. I hope you guys learned something. Like I said, the webinar will be recorded and uploaded, and I'll send the link out when it's ready. And we'll also be sending out a feedback survey, so please fill that out. It should only take you 45 seconds, and it really, really helps us out. So thanks again, everyone. I think we're all done for today. Until next time.